In this episode, you'll learn from a professional running physio/physical therapist what IT band syndrome or ITB syndrome actually is, how to fix it, how to avoid it, immediate treatment once you get it, 8 to 12 week follow-up treatment, ongoing lifelong treatment of IT band syndrome, and a few other secret hacks, tips, and tricks to help you out, and a bunch more. Let's get into it. All right, moving on to the next case, number 2. We've got John, who is a 45-year-old male who has been running consistently for the past year, averaging about 15 miles per week. That is 25 miles. Is that? Yeah, 25-ish mile, 25 kilometers.
So 25 per week, sorry.
Yeah, so 15 miles for Americans, because I know half my audience, if not more, is American, and then 25 kilometers per week for the rest of the world that uses a system that makes sense on the 10 scale. Americans, get it right, please. I say this all the time. I'm looking at Americans, get it right. And that will never happen. He has recently been experiencing pain on the outside of his left knee that he describes as a dull ache or burning sensation. The pain tends to come on during longer runs, especially when going downhill, and he rates it as a 7 out of 10 at its worst. He has tried foam rolling and stretching that area, and as well as taking a few days from running, but the pain persists. What would you call this?
This sounds like iliotibial band syndrome, also known as ITB syndrome.
All right, just that straight up. I mean, yeah, it's a case study. Yeah. What would be the immediate treatment for it?
So with ITB syndrome, what happens is the iliotibial band, which is a thick band of fascia that runs along the outside of our leg. It originates from two muscles, so your TFL, tensor fascia latae, and also your glute max.
Where's the TFL?
Right at the front of the hip. So if you get your hip bone at the front of your hip, you bring your hands down slightly and a little bit more lateral, that's where the TFL sits. The ITB comes from those two muscles. It runs down the outside of the leg and attaches onto the tibia. Now with the ITB, if it starts to tension, it will start to compress a little fat pad and bursa that sits on the outside of your knee. That's what gets inflamed. So the immediate treatment sometimes is, again, here I'm recommending anti-inflammatories here, but this is another one I'd say start with some ibuprofen twice a day, 5 days as the initial treatment. You don't want to take anti-inflammatories for too long because it can cause gastrointestinal upset and stomach ache. So I don't want everyone with ITB to, every time pain comes on, start popping anti-inflammatories. But it's an initial, treatment. This hasn't happened before. That would be my go-to. In terms of release work, we want to focus on releasing the TFL in particular. Lots of people think about, massage the ITB, let's foam roll the ITB, but that does nothing for the fascia. It's strong and it's thick. There was one study, I can't remember how much force was placed through it, but they put a huge amount of force through the ITB and there was basically almost little to no stretch through it. You need to focus on releasing your TFL as well as the glutes. And then in terms of strengthening exercises, we want to improve our glute medius strength because that will stop the TFL, trying to kick in, trying to tension up, and that in turn tensions the ITB.
All right, so ongoing, 8 to 12 weeks has gone. They've seen you a couple times. What would you then have them, let's say they're 100%.
Yeah.
What would you have them do to maintain?
Oh, I'd make sure they're maintaining their strength. So with the more strength with ITB syndrome, you want to start with, your simple glute exercises. You want to do them with your knee extended, such as like a side-lying leg raise, because anything like clamshells and whatnot, while the knee is bent, it's going to be painful. So you want to do your glute exercises with a long leg. And then as we progress, they begin to become more functional. Bulgarian split squats work well here. Again, pain needs to be minimal, nothing more than a 3-4 out of 10. As they continue to progress through their rehab, we're, maintaining, building their kilometres back up. We can have a look at gait retraining. I am mindful of changing a runner's gait too much, but if there's anything glaring out there that needs to be addressed, it would be a good time to review what they're looking like on the treadmill. Anything
else you want to add about, I call it IT band issues like
ITB syndrome.
ITB syndrome, yeah. Anything else you want to say about this? And this is a big thing that comes up in the runners community. Anything?
It was my major running injury when I trained for my first marathon. Oh. It was when I first started physio. Many training errors were made. I made a few mistakes, and I did it on the Blackmores half marathon a month out from the Melbourne Marathon. Did it. It was extremely painful. Like I had pain. I had a slight injury in my hip, and silly me just went and did the half marathon, and halfway through, I was like, why does the outside of my knee hurt? I'm like, is this referred pain coming from my hip? Soon as I finished the run, I was like, oh, couldn't walk, had ITB syndrome straight away. So again, first line treatment. I don't think I've actually ever seen a patient walking with how bad mine was looking. But first line treatment, again, anti-inflammatories, lots of release work, start working the glutes. But I rested for 2 weeks because it was so painful. But unfortunately, when I started to run again, the pain was still there and I was 2 weeks out from my marathon. Now I'm doing a whole do as I say, not as I do moment, but I looked at the research evidence for ITB syndrome and cortisone injections. Now, this would not be first-line treatment. I'd hardly recommend this, but doing this marathon meant a lot to me. And plus, I wanted to be a little bit of an experiment guinea pig on myself. So I went to the doctors, got a referral, I got an injection 2 weeks out from the marathon. I looked at the research on ITB syndrome and it said you have a trend for a decline in pain after 1 week and a significant decline in pain after 2 weeks. And that's exactly what happened. The run before the marathon, happy days, off I go. Did the marathon. But then afterwards, my outer part of my knee just didn't feel quite right. And this was for a few months. So it felt almost stiff. It was a really peculiar feeling. So I don't want people to take away from this, oh, I'm going to get cortisone, it'll fix everything up. Cortisone's a steroid. It's detrimental for tissues. Luckily for the ITB, it's just into the fat pad and the bursa, but I still would not recommend it unless you've exhausted all options and you've gone to a sports doctor, you've gone to specialist, because as I said, it's helpful in one regard but can be harmful in another. Once again, I was a very, very fresh physio, hadn't quite got into the running stuff yet, and yes, many training errors were made. Did the run though.
If you want to learn more about this topic, we went into further detail. You should go and check that out right here.